Breast milk science. It's a thing. And it's our thing. We're ByHeart. We're an infant formula company on a mission to get a lot closer to the most super food on the planet, breast milk. Our patented protein blend has more of the important and most abundant proteins found in breast milk. We're the first and only U.S.-made formula to use organic, grass-fed whole milk, not skim. We make our formula in our own factories in Iowa, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, using a small batch manufacturing process that works to preserve the integrity of our ingredients. We ran the largest clinical trial by a new infant formula company in 25 years, and clinically proved benefits like easier digestion, less gas, and softer poops versus a leading infant formula. We were the first infant formula company to earn the Clean Label Project Purity Award. And while we've put a lot into ByHeart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like no corn syrup, no maltodextrin, no GMO ingredients, no soy, no palm oil. ByHeart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at byheart.com.
Wendy's Coffee House. Explore reality. People still believe the myths. Ghosts only come out at night. There's no physical evidence of Bigfoot. Only old buildings are haunted. Oh, and one more. Aliens are little green men in flying saucers. Wake up and smell the paranormal. It isn't what you think. And it might not be what you believe. You don't have to drink coffee to smell it. Wendy's Coffee House. Give it a listen. Brent Raynes is the publisher of Alternate Perceptions magazine, featuring all sorts of Fortean content, UFOs, ghosts, consciousness, metaphysics, paranormal, the whole nine yards. We had an interview previously and didn't have time for the EVPs. So this is the focus this time, EVPs. We'll play some, and Brent will continue talking about how this came about. If you didn't hear the first interview, we talked about Peruvian whistles, and that was pretty fascinating. Brent has a collection, and some of the things that happen when people hear those Peruvian flutes, that's the extraordinary part. And that's in the first segment. The book, John Keel, The Man, the Myths, and the Ongoing Mysteries, is the subject, and that's what the EVPs are about. So a fascinating look into EVPs. And so we'll start with one that's really obvious, and it's John Keel, but you'll hear Brent's voice so you can discern that that's what he's saying. And then we'll get into some of the others later in the show. Now here's the EVP.
John Keel. John Keel.
Brent Raynes, apmagazine.info.
I had dabbled some in trying to do EVPs and thought maybe a time or two. Usually I was the one debunking EVPs, and then when I got John Keel coming to EVPs, that, after his passing, well,
okay,
that was high strangeness for me.
Okay, you want to talk about the EVP there with John Keel?
If you want to.
And here we go. Take two. EVPs.
I was involved back in 2010 doing some just paranormal investigations, looking at haunted sites. And I was working with Sandy Nichols from Thompson Station and Brett Oldham from up around Nashville. Now, Sandy Nichols is he described having experiences with greys and reptilians, a contact experiencer, going all the way back to childhood.
Mm.
But he was also, because of the psychic component, his psychic ability, also interested, he's experienced ghosts. He was also interested in doing paranormal investigations. So I said, I'll my wife and I will join you in this work. And he brought in this gentleman, Brett Oldham, and Brett was using the thing called the Ghost Box, digital radio, AM, FM, that you can get out of Radio Shack, and you can just, the scanner goes through the stations. You can fix it where it goes through continuous scan. And so that's what he was doing, and he claimed that the white noise allowed you to pick up spirit voices, besides just, going through radio stations.
Yeah.
So I was, in fact, my daughter just had a little boy, grandson Connor, so we were up at Sandy's, and Brett was there, showing how this was done, and I was, I just let my wife and daughter just go in and attend the session, and I would stay in another room with Connor, and watch after him, because I had done some EVP stuff, and I would just kind of kind of skeptical, believe it or not.
Imagine that.
They wanted. I figured, they would they'd let me know how it went. And so afterwards, I heard, they heard Joan come through which is my wife's name, come through the box, and then Junior, which had been her, what's her brother, Junior. Everybody called him Junior, and he was. They heard Junior, and so she was kind of impressed by that. He had passed on. And so I decided, next time I have an opportunity, I'll try this.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, in March of that year, we had found a place. A Native American friend of ours, John Thunder, was an artist, Apache, full blood, and he was working at this old church. It was almost 100 years old. It's past that now at this point, but over in Fayetteville, Tennessee. It's about 70 miles east of our location here in Waynesboro. And he and someone else heard footsteps, when they were down in the basement, and they went up the stairs, and there was no one there. And apparently this happened more than once. And this had been a church a long time ago, and now it was a community center, art center. And so they invited John to come and display his Native American art and such. He had this big old powwow drum up on the stage, a couple of them, actually. And in fact, I posted a picture of him and grandson Connor getting lessons on beating the drum, and he's all smiling and excited.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, called in Brent and Sandy, and we all went over there and did an EVP session down in the basement. I really thought at the time, other people were hearing things, but I didn't really hear anything at the time. Okay. That changed later, but
Yes.
I'll leave it at that point. And then in May, we were on another ghost investigation, and twice, Brett says, I just heard John Keel. And we also get into some other interactive stuff, and I wrote about that in earlier alternate perceptions, but got John Keel twice. And I listened to the audio later. Yep, sounded just like a male voice said John Keel. And so anyway, I realized I need to get one of these myself. So my son-in-law, he decided, because my daughter Chandra is very interested in investigating the paranormal. So he said, I'll make you one. And he went to Radio Shack and he modified a digital AM FM radio. So then we started doing it here at the house. But anyway, and I'll get to that in just a moment. It gets to be kind of long, but on July 3rd of 2010, we're all, at Sandy's in Thompson Station, a few miles south of Nashville. And there was myself, my wife, Brett, and his wife at that time, Gina, and Sandy. And we had the ghost box hooked up to these loudspeakers. In fact, we had to yell because the speakers hooked up to the stereo speakers to the radio was so loud. But boy, the things we picked up that night, I asked, you guys mind if we try to reach John Keel? Uh-huh. And so we got a recording. Brett asked, can John Keel say his name? And I mean, just a second or two, and there's John Keel. And we got it beautiful on the audio. It's clear. Uh-huh. And at one point, he says, can John tell us anything about, what can he tell us about Bigfoot? Because, Brett claimed up in Ohio one time he had an encounter with Bigfoot as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And this voice says, and this is the way it sounded, Smuck Bigfoot, see? And then there were like two other voices, see. And that was curious. and then I asked, John, what can you tell us about Jadu? Because back in the 50s, he had gone across from Egypt, journeyed across sometimes on foot, sometimes he'd catch a ride with somebody on a train or car, from Egypt to all the way to Singapore, and he went through India, Tibet, and places, and just had all these, amazing experiences.
Yeah. And
Jadu was the title of a book he wrote in 1957 about his experiences. Jadu being black magic, and It was titled Jadoo Mysteries of the Orient.
Mm-hmm.
And as an amateur magician, he would do lots of tricks, and he knew a lot of what stage magicians do. And so in his travels, he kind of caught a lot of these people who claimed they were doing magic and figured out what their tricks were, or paid to find out, paid them to find out how they did it.
Yeah.
And so this was all part of his book, And but then there were some things that happened that he couldn't explain, and so that's in his book as well. So he definitely was a holy man that he met that he kept wanting to find, and one day he's walking and the guy finds him somehow, and he does a little mind reading thing for Keel, and accurately tells him what Keel is thinking. And he says, "Oh, Mr. Keel, surely you can do better than your boots." So then Keel thought of something else, and again he correctly guesses what it is,
Yeah.
And so Keel asks him, "How do you do that? Can you teach me?" And he says, "No, it takes years." He says, "I can give you a simple explanation, but it would take a long time for you to develop." But something about imagine you're going down a path and then noticing the things along your mental imagery that you have in your mind for the path. And
that's brilliant.
and so anyway, I was that night we did 2 sessions, and I was just I couldn't deny it any longer, and so we started doing different experiments. We'd have something written down and try to get the spirit, the intelligence to say what was on the paper. And there were times we actually got what was written down.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like in September or so, I was reviewing some audio, and that first one in March where I didn't hear anything at that old church building over in Fayetteville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Well, I was listening to this cassette tape. I was using cassette at the time. I was behind the times. And there was a part where they were getting near the end, and he asked his spirit guide, "Could you see if Joan's brother, Jesse, if he can say something before we shut this off?" And so I'm listening. Oh yeah, this is that recording, and I'm about to switch it off, and suddenly I hear Keel, Johnny,
Yes.
and then it sounds like an argument. And I put the headphones on. I have Joan. I invite Joan over, and I put the headphones on. I say, "Listen to what happens here. Does this sound? This argument is like an argument going on.
Yeah.
Does this sound like it could be your brother's voice?" And she nodded her head. She thought that it could have been. It wasn't real clear, but it was him that was invited to leave a message, and instead we get Keel, Johnny.
Yeah. An interruption.
Yeah. So then we get our own recording. We're recording different anomalies, and one day I get a real clear. I think it was February 2012. John Keel, Brent, and then Bert here, and Bert was what I call Berthold Schwartz, who had passed on in September of 2010, and he was the parapsychologist, psychiatrist who knew Kreskin, and also got into the UFO field because Keel had contacted him, so he knew Keel. And so we had a number of things like spirit communications with with him as well, where we'd get Schwartz, or sounded like Dr. Schwartz. But what was interesting is then again, just fairly recently, I went back to one of those back early on where Brett got 2 John Keels on the same evening on this ghost investigation. And on one of them, I picked up something I totally missed. It said John Keel, and then it sounded like Brent. And that's what I got here at the house about a year and a half later, was John Keel, Brent, And I thought, wow, this is even stranger than I thought.
Okay, I think we're ready for this here. And you do have to listen closely, but these are some of Brent's EVPs. There are 2 versions. The first one is the one he sent me as is. The second one, I slowed down just a bit so you could hear a little more clearly what was being said. And you can determine what was being said. But one way or the other, there are two samples. The first one is the original, and the second one is a slowed down version. So listen carefully and see what you think. Cut 1. Number 2. Cut 3.
John, can you please tell us, you know now also, what are Bigfoot? John, can you please tell us, you know now also, what are Bigfoot?
Sample 4. One way or the other, there are distinct voices and sounds in those EVPs.
And also, Brent turned out to be an alien abduction experiencer, and he's now written a couple of books about his alien abduction experiences. So he wasn't just a ghost hunter with a psychic ability. He saw a ghost when he was age 5, and he saw one of his first grays when he was age 5. So he's again one of these long-time experiencers, and was able to use his abilities to go out and conduct spirit investigations too.
Open doors and windows. That's Brett Oldham, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and the other experiencer was Sandy
Nichols, up in Thompson Station. He formed a group called Alien Research Investigations, I think.
Okay. And Sandy, what's the last name?
It's Nichols.
Nichols. Okay, Nichols. I love the EVP stuff, though, because you don't hear it. You actually, a lot of times that stuff, it is not in our physical range. And then to go back and hear the tapping or hear the language or hear things like that, I've had that myself when I was just driving along. And I used a cassette, old school, back in Sedona. And I was in the car and I heard this tapping, so I tried to tape it. And at the point that I was recording, I heard absolutely zilch. I went back and listened to it later, and it was like it was just right in my ear. It was how loud it was, and I heard nothing. And I thought, this is, we get this alongside us, but it's a different dimension. So I like that ultra-terrestrial that John Keel came up with, because I do think there's more to this. And as we continue to explore, we may begin to find out a few more clues. I don't know if we'll get the answer. Clues would be helpful.
And then there's so many confusing things. Like we were in this hospital over in Fayetteville, an abandoned hospital that was haunted, and we were all gathered in one spot, and suddenly it was like we heard these voices of some people talking down the hall, and we expected they were going to come right up to us. They were walking toward us from down this hallway, and I ran down the hall and I looked out the window. There was nobody there, and I looked out the window to see if I could see anybody outside, and couldn't see anybody. And we had recorders running and didn't pick any of it up. All you heard was us.
Yeah.
And then another time, there was a meeting I had with Greg Little, and I was showing him how the ghost box worked, and I was recording it about 5 minutes, just a demonstration. And when I played it back, it was Sandy in his voice, Sandy Nichols in his voice saying, "Hey, Brent." and which is the way a lot of times when he calls me up, he has something he wants to tell me. He says, "Hey, Brent," and he wanted to be with me that day, meeting Greg, and it didn't work out. And instead I had to call him later and say, "Where were you and what were you doing?" It was at a golf course. But that was his voice. I had him and his wife listen to it, and Brett and my wife, and everybody says that's clearly Sandy's voice saying, "Hey, Brent." But, Brent's still, Sandy's still alive and well and not in the spirit world, although he does claim to have astral projection experiences. So you could pick up some anomalous recordings sometimes.
Let me give you one more clue. I was doing the show, and this is on Power, when we were recording, and the guys in the studio, and there was something that happened during the show, and I heard him say, and it was a cuss word kind of a thing, and he was frustrated with what was going on, and I could hear that. And so later on, as we're wrapping, I said, "Now you'll need to cut this," and I repeat it to him out of the off the audio, and he said, and this is like legend now. And he didn't say anything. His mic was off, but it was in his head, and it was on my end. It was loud, and I thought, okay, that needs to come out. Edit that. He was so frustrated that it became its own little element and was there. So,
wow.
Yeah, so stuff like that. I think, we're unconscious of the things of our abilities, because for one thing, he was able to corroborate that his mic wasn't on, and plus he was also mortified at what else I might be picking up on that he wasn't saying. We won't go there. But anyway, that there's more going on here than we are at this point, I think, conscious of, and that's
right. And I know that with in a similar vein with Sandy, he really strongly wanted to be there for that meeting. So, somehow or another, it's like, it was almost like a projection somehow.
Yes, he was. Well, part of him was there. And so that, I think that's it. There's more to this, and we have other elements that we haven't yet tapped into and learned how to work with. I like the holy man who gave the advice that imagine you're walking down a path and the images that things that stand out to you. That's like a remote viewer's advice. What doesn't belong? What are the anomalies? What will surprise you? And there's a lot of surprises.
One of the people in my book too I had interviewed was Dan Drazen, who was mentioned in Mothman Prophecy several times, and Dan was actually trying to work on it. He does documentary films.
Yes.
And he was trying to do a thing with PBS at the time. He went down to in the 60s with Keel to Point Pleasant, met Mary Hyre, a member of the Mothman witnesses, and had some UFO experiences and paranormal things that happened. And more recently, in recent years, he's actually done a documentary on EVPs, film EVPs, and also where, people pick up images on television sets and things, and some extraordinary work there. And I let him listen to 2 or 3 of the John Keel audios that I have, and he said one of them even to him sounded like John Keel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought I'd mention that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And I saw that he's a documentary filmmaker. What else? What is it, the one that you're talking about current? Can we see it?
Calling Earth, I think is the title of it. Yeah, Calling Earth.
Okay. And I might have actually seen that. So anyone who's listening can also check it out
too. It's a little over an hour long. What happened was Nancy Colbert, who was well known as a crop circle investigator from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and she'd be over in England and places investigating, and also Holland investigating crop circle and UFOs and things.
Mm-hmm.
And she had the subject over in Holland who could he was very psychic, mediumistic, and he captured images on film. And so the reason I finally tracked down Dan Drazen, who's been on my radar ever since I read Mothman Prophecies, was she had posted a thing where Dan Drazen had worked with this guy, and he was in this room, and he had everything under control. He was using his own cameras and everything, and doing a very careful job of controlling the environment, just him and the medium guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he captured anomalous images on the film, in this film. And I contacted Nancy, and I said, is this the guy mentioned in the Mothman prophecies? And she said, well, I don't know, but here's his email. Contact him and find out. So I did, and lo and behold, oh yes, John Keel, yes, I knew him well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so many little threads that connect, and it's amazing how when you're ready, then they come back to you, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is brand new. I didn't really look at it the first time around, and now I'm ready. And plus, I might have a little bit more information so I can make a better, I think, impression or imprint with whatever it is I'm going to pick up from this. There's just, that's why I like what you're working on and what you've done since you were, what'd you say, 14?
Yeah, 14. It's been 54 years.
That's not fair. That's it. You got to start. I was still reading. I was still, hoping and having some interesting experiences. But yeah, you kind of just shot out of the cannon and said, "Here I am. I'm going for it."
Yeah, it was a long time. I mean, for a long time, I told people that I'm just an investigator. I haven't had any experiences myself. Some people would say, "Yeah, but there's some reason you're doing this that you don't understand." And I thought, nah, but, I know that now I've been exposed to some strange stuff. And now I look back some things that I thought was my imagination as a child. And I think, that's very similar. And I talked with, and I've even talked to other experiencers who have, contacts with alien spirit or whatever. And I realize there's elements to things that I can remember as a child that actually are very similar to what they're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
So, there may be a lot of us that, just never really connect the dots there.
I agree. I think so too. And talking with some of the experiencers and comparing notes, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I knew there were hints and clues, and I wrote them down. I journaled, and I was, connecting that, but I didn't have the language for it, and I didn't ever consider it. I didn't ever do the UFO thing. ETs, aliens, no. Spirit guides, I would be fine with that. But then I realized this, and Bigfoot, no, UFO, no, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, yeah, okay, it's telepathic. Well, I guess that fits.
And, John Keel had a business card where he'd have his contact information. It said photographer, journalist, and then an authority on nothing.
Yes. Yeah. It's like there's just too much here. So, okay. So we wrap with belief is the enemy, because you have to remain open and don't corner yourself. Put yourself in a box by saying, I know what it is. Think, it could be, it might be, but there's more to know. And then you've kept yourself open and receptive to the next piece of the equation, I think. Brent, thank you. I appreciate, you've got so many stories. We'll connect again, because we didn't even get the tip of the iceberg on this. We just kind of, did a little surfing.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Wendy, for having me on. It's always enjoyable talking with you, and I appreciate it. And, as you say, there's just so many things that we can talk about. It's just a bottomless pit.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we'll stay connected. Okay, the links are on the blog, wendyscoffeehouse.com, or at Audio Boom. You can find more information about Brent Raynes and AP Magazine, the website apmagazine.info, and wendyscoffeehouse.com. That's where you can find me. Thanks for listening.